All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the J-Term session, Reaching Your Audience. I'm Rod Toston, and you'll hear from Daryl Jones here in a second. Wear a bunch of different hats here at the college. I graduated in '85 and returned in 1990 after getting my PhD and started teaching computer science. And then in 2004, I transitioned into IT, and I'm now the vice president of IT, and I still do teach a computer science course. There's something really special and personal for me today. Little history. When I was a student here, you would take four courses in the fall, one over the whole month of January, and then four courses during a regular semester in the spring. My senior year, January of 1985, was the last year that the college hosted anything that looked like a January term. And so flash forward 36 years later, and here we are starting up J-Term again virtually. And I have to say my J-Term experiences were the best, some of the best times of my college career. And it just warms my heart to see that it's starting back up. And it's just awesome and a privilege to be able to share this moment with you all and starting this up. So thank you very much for participating. We have a lot of fun things we're going to do here. And with that, I'm going to take a pause and turn it over to Daryl to introduce himself, and then I'll be back to talk about our first breakout session.
Thanks, Rod, and thank you, everybody. It is great to be with you. And just FYI, and this is no lie, Rod and I did both coordinate our outfits so that we'd both be rocking a little orange and blue today. But I'm Daryl Jones, for those who don't know me. I am our Senior Associate Director of Admission and Coordinator for Multicultural Admission and Intercollegiate Athletics Liaison. My travel territories cover lots of different parts of the nation, but primarily the Midwest. I see a couple of you who are athletes. I have volunteered. This would technically be the 36th year that I would be a volunteer for the track and field program. So I see a couple of people that I coach on here. And I'm also part of the IDEA Council, which is Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Advancement, that is run by Jean Arnold, who is our Chief Diversity Officer. So I deal with all sorts of things regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion for anybody. I somehow, at the age of 57, am annually asked to be the faculty advisor for the Bomb Squad hip hop dance troupe. And if you know me, you know that I say yes to everything that students ask. So part of what I get to do nationally is speak all the time, but I also get the chance to observe how people reach their audiences. So what I do is, instead of considering myself to be an expert, which I am, I consider every time that I speak an opportunity to learn. So what Rod and I are going to do today is teach you about reaching your audience, so that even if you're nervous, even if it unsettles you, even if presenting virtually makes you nervous, you're going to feel better about it. You're going to speak with fluidity and fluency, which I'll touch on a little bit, but you're going to become someone who masters the biggest common fear among at least Americans, and that is public speaking. So with that, Rod, take it away, my friend.
All right. Thank you, Daryl, and thank you for the sharing that you did. Just a couple housekeeping things. If you haven't brought up Mentimeter and a browser on your cell phone, Josh Wagner is helping us. And Josh Wagner is the manager of the Innovation and Creativity Lab. That's where I am right now. This is in the West Building and open to all students. You can come in and use our laser cutters. You can come in and use the 3D printers. There's all kinds of hands-on creativity opportunities here in the Innovation and Creativity Lab. So I recommend that you check it out. So we're going to start out and go into a breakout room. Let's just get going and start chatting it up with each other. So we would like you to think about three things in the breakout room. Number one, if you could share your name and why you signed up for the session. Share what makes you nervous. Daryl and I were talking about, we had some positive butterflies right up front here, and what we do to have fun with those butterflies. And so what makes you nervous when you're presenting to an audience? And then also, what makes you confident when you're presenting to an audience? What makes you passionate, or what makes you get up there? So Josh is going to break everybody out into groups of 4. And if you could just quickly, we'll give you about 5 minutes, 6 minutes. So whatever's on the top of your head, and just start practicing reaching the other people in your group and reaching your audience there in your breakout session. So any questions? All right, Josh, let's go into breakout rooms. So we're back. I think we're back. I might have lost somebody here, yeah? Okay. Well, welcome back. I've taken my glasses off and zoomed in, and here we are again. So just a question. In your college career, in your personal life, what opportunities do you have for presenting to audiences? And not, not just 1 or 2 people, but just, a lot of different situations. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be here at Gettysburg, but if you could go to Mentimeter and type in some words that we can think about this. Class presentations, definitely the one. Yeah. Discussion with friends. That's good. Performances.
I see athletics. I mean, that's pretty constant. Gallery talks there. I've attended a few of those. Singing. I mean, that is reaching your audience. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's important when you talk to your friends that, a lot of times it's the same techniques that we do for a class presentation, just being prepared and knowing your facts. Job interviews, that's right.
Yeah. Somebody thinking about their future. I like it.
I like it.
Finally, somebody said class finally. Thank you very much. Whoever that is gets a gold star for the day.
Greek life, absolutely. I was president of ATO, and as president, I had to do announcements and talk at dinner each night. So, yeah. A lot of good stuff.
Very cool.
Absolutely. Anything else? It looks like team sports. Yeah. Singing. Absolutely. A lot of good stuff here. And we wanted to make a point with this slide, in that, reaching your audiences applies to a lot of different areas and a lot of different opportunities. Outside of class, inside of class, at work. And so it's something that's a part of our life all the time. And, being prepared and thinking about these things are important. And that's why we're all here. So with that, I'm going to step back and turn it over to Daryl. And he's going to talk a little bit about best practices. And I've attended Daryl's workshops before, and I've learned a lot from Daryl. So good stuff coming.
Thanks a lot, Rod. So here's the deal, folks. And yes, I said here's the deal as a 57-year-old. Part of what you need to understand is that reaching your audience can be done in a couple of different ways. You can do it poorly and be memorable, or you can do it positively and be positively memorable. I'm not going to ask you which one you want to be, because I'm hoping it's positive, although I do know that well, let's just say this, Rod. The son of a lifelong friend of mine is one of our students here, and he would answer the opposite just to be a contrarian, because that's who he is, but I digress. So part of what we're talking about here is this. We've all had instances in which someone has presented and they've presented poorly, and here is an actual experience I had at a national conference that everybody had to pay a lot of money to attend. Literally, the first words out of the first presenter's mouth were this: I'm by no means an expert on this topic, but over the next hour and 15 minutes, I hope to. And then I heard absolutely nothing. In fact, I'm a notorious front row sitter. I got up and walked out of the room. And I mean, there might have been 500 people in the room. The person on the microphone literally asked, wait, where are you going? And I said, well, I'm going to a session in which somebody actually feels like they are experts. So these self-deprecating things you might think make you more human, but what they do is they make really snarky people like me not listen. As I was looking at some of your comments that you filled out in the survey prior to this, in fact, I'm going to bring it up on my screen just to read some of them. In looking at what makes you nervous or what makes you excited and confident, I mean, I hear you. Lots of people, I get nervous when it's a very large crowd. I feel confident presenting to those who are not in my age group. Lot of nervousness about presenting and not feeling good enough and having all the attention on you, being afraid of forgetting what to say and stumbling over your words. Understood. Looking at things like when I think I might stumble over my words or talk too fast, forgetting what to say, messing up what I plan on saying. And then the confidence piece, the love of communicating, the love of presenting on a topic you love, eye contact, and the opportunity to spread knowledge and be the center of attention as opposed to people who don't want to be. So here's how you handle that, folks. First, because the number one common fear is public speaking, you get sympathy, you get empathy, because everyone else in the audience is going, oh my God, I hope this person does well, but at least it's not me. Which means you need to use that as a way to fuel your presentation. So I'm going to recall a time in my dreamlike state, Rod, in which we did things like this in person. Do you remember? Here's what speakers do. They sit in the front of the room. They don't interact with the audience. And then they get up and they speak to this sea of eyes that are burning holes through them. Well, there's no rule that says you have to do that. In fact, what Rod knows that I like to do is if I'm going to speak, I actually hang out at the door. And in the old days, meaning pre-COVID, I shook hands with as many people as possible. I guess we can't do that one anymore, but I want to make sure that there's some way that I connect with the audience so it's not this sea of people. Instead, it's a bunch of human beings with whom I'm making connections. And then a couple of you mentioned eye contact, both in the makes me nervous and in the makes me confident sense. Here's what you do. And in the wrong hands, this is manipulation. In the right hands, it's just influence. You spend a little more time giving eye contact to those that give it to you. And then everybody else will lean forward and say, wait, where's my attention? Because as the speaker, you are the authority. You are the expert. And people don't need to know what your presentation is. In fact, if you just have 3 topics you want to cover, or 5, you can remember 3 or 5 things. Research them, do deep work on them, and then talk about those so that if people don't know what you didn't talk about, instead, they remember what you did. So you speak with confidence. You speak with a pace that says you know what you're talking about. You use pauses. Yeah, like I just did. Because either you are pausing to gather the next thought, or you are pausing because you don't know what the heck you're talking about. But the audience doesn't need to know. The audience just needs to know that you care about your topic, that you've done work to make sure you're an engaging speaker, and then you present with happiness. A little later, I'm going to be talking about body language and tone and word choice, and we'll share a few slides to illustrate it. But what we're trying to get you to do is this. Understand that a little nervousness is okay because it will fuel you. Understand that if you know your topic and you do research and you rehearse, you're going to feel better. And then understand how you scope the room. So I'm going to give you an example of the limitations of Zoom. You might think, I'm thirsty right now, so I need something to drink. Well, look at how big a cup looks when you are taking a drink of water. This is empty, obviously, but when you're taking a drink of water. So I would argue best practice, hydrate before you get on camera, because seniors, juniors, your job interviews, your grad school, your law school, your career interviews are probably going to be virtual. So set yourself up for success. And when we return to in-person speaking that all of you will do, understand that whether you are talking about athletics or religion or performing or gallery talks or class or some of the other things you mentioned, you know what you want to say. You need to have something called kinesthetic awareness, and part of your homework will be looking that up. Kinesthetic awareness. I know a couple of you who are track and field athletes that get to hear me say this all the time are tired of hearing it, but kinesthetic awareness is knowing what you're doing, when you're doing it, and being totally aware. The people who have the highest level of kinesthetic awareness, I would argue are gymnasts, martial artists, people who do trapeze and better have it, people who do tightrope walking and better have it, lion and tiger trainers that better have it. So you've got to know what you're doing and how you're doing it the entire time. So here's what we're going to do to get you to think about: first, knowing your topic; second, presenting it with a pace that sounds natural; third, being ready to accept feedback, because feedback is positive. Constructive criticism is always seen as a negative. We're going to have you introduce yourselves. That's right, because only you know you as well as you do. So, Rod, I'll allow you to pick the topics in a moment, but we're going to have each of you introduce yourselves so that you can do that again with fluidity and fluency. Because if I am introducing myself in the beginning of this, as I'm going, okay, I'm Daryl Jones, and I am here to talk to you about reaching your audience, and I'm at the end of this, you're gonna be better at it or something like that. So right, that's a waste of time. Right now, you're wasting oxygen, and oxygen is precious in these times of COVID. You didn't think I could squeeze that in, but I did. So when you introduce yourselves, you're going to get feedback from your breakout room partners. But Rod, what are some things that we should have people do in introducing themselves so that we can talk to them afterwards about how to do it correctly?
Well, I would recommend talking about something that's passionate, that is personal, like I did at the beginning about this being a special J term for me. And also, some of the, there's nuts and bolts, how, what class year are you and what's your major. But the most important thing, as Daryl pointed out, is to be fluid about it and to also be confident about yourself. I use the introduction as a way to calm my nerves and to settle into the talk. So the introduction is very, very important. And you want to find a way to make the other people connect with you. In this breakout session, introduce yourself, and then the other people, your other partners, will give you some feedback. And, both kinds of feedback are important. And so I hope you enjoy this session. Anything else, Daryl, before we send them out into the breakout room, and then we'll get some feedback. We'll give you about 20 minutes to do this.
Yeah, Rod, how about if we use this as a feedback model? each person who speaks is going to get 2 positives and then a thing to work on. So instead of saying you did this horribly, say, work on improving this so that you're aware of it. That way, it's a kind feedback model that people can utilize.
That's a great suggestion. I think we're good to send them out to the breakout rooms. Anything else? All right. Enjoy, have fun. We'll see you in about 20 minutes, and then we'll chat a little bit about your experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
So looks like we have everybody back. All right. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the session. And so now 3 words that describe what you experienced and felt during your introduction breakout session. And, one of the reasons we ask this question is because giving a presentation is emotional. And, the concept of being nervous, the concept of being excited or confident, there's a lot of emotion that we have to make sure that we recognize and acknowledge. And that's one of the reasons why we're kind of asking you these kind of words. Sure, it's awkward. Sure, it can be comfortable. Absolutely. Helpful, nervous, relaxing. Daryl and I were just saying, and Josh, how much fun we're having and how excited and how connected and the energy that we're feeling from you all. So that's great. Chill is good. I like that. Little random. You never know what's coming down. It gets the excitement going.
Yeah, it was interesting to see, again, to speak to the point when we were preparing, that comfortable and uncomfortable were 2 of the very first responses.
Yeah, absolutely. Looks like we're pretty well settled in on this. Vulnerable, that's a good word. That's a word that we should keep in our mind. Focused, yeah, it's good to be focused. So I like a lot of these words. So thank you for sharing those, and we appreciate your time and working through some of these during your breakout session. So with that, we're going to move on, and Daryl, we're going to flip it back to you to chat a little bit about body language. As I lean in and you there.
Exactly. Well played there, Rod. So, folks, here are the 3 components of face-to-face communication. They are body language, which, I'll make the math easy, is about 60% of how we communicate face-to-face. And tone, which is about 30%. And word choice, that is 10%. So again, body language, 60%. Tone is 30%, and words are only 10%. And here's an example. You might be thinking, come on, words have to count for more. But imagine your 17-year-old self, the first time you asked to use the car, and one of your parents just went like this. That's a clear no without using any words. So Josh, if you could pull up my slides, I want to talk to people really quickly just about this piece that we're talking about. So what you want to do is reach your audience, but you don't want to distract them. You don't want to distract them. So Josh, on my screen, I'm just seeing half of the slide. If the rest of the audience can see, there you go. So body language, positive body language, which you all are going to talk about, we need to know what that is. We need to have you understand what positive body language is. In fact, Rod, is this where we do the cool thing and we ask them to put in the waterfall what positive body language is?
I think this is perfect now that I'm unmuted. And if they could jump into the chat and just rattle off some words, everybody just type into the chat and we'll look at it. We'll do a chat waterfall and see what people believe or look or interpret as positive body language.
Yeah. So obviously frowning, threatening people, shaking a fist at them, not positive body language. So tell us, good posture, projecting your voice, love it. I love this. Smiling, eye contact, even though we don't know when people are smiling with masks. Smiling again, yep. Standing tall, of course, having good posture is related to that. Inviting demeanor, which is how you look at people with your eyes and your hands, not creating a barrier so that even if you're cold, this says that you're trying to keep people away. Shoulders back, heads up, absolutely. So this is just body language. Here's more. Yep, great. Posture, hand gestures. And if you're a hand talker, folks, just use them. But remember, in the land of Zoom, don't get too close to the camera because that creates awkwardness. With eye contact, let's keep it simple. Remember to blink every once in a while because we have to do that. So thank you for doing that. Moving around a bit is good, but here's my thing. For those who like to rock back and forth a little bit, be intentional about your movements when you're in front of people. Don't rock back and forth because, friends, it makes it seem like you have to go to the restroom and you can't. So don't rock back and forth. Okay, Alex or Josh, if you could go to the next slide, please. And this is about tone. Remember, this is 30%. So since you are talking about a topic that you care about, whether it's class or you in an interview, use many tones to alter the pitch of your voice. If you speak in a monotone, people are going to think you're bored with whatever the topic is, and that means we will be bored with your topic as well. So please, again, use your kinesthetic awareness and know what you sound like. The feedback loop, whether you record yourself on a phone or using the camera function, will tell us whether or not you care about what you say. Don't overdo it. You're not a game show host. You're not going to say, my name is Daryl Jones and here's my topic, and I can't wait to talk to you, because I would run away screaming. And then if we can go to word choice, which again is only 10%, but it's still important. People, if you sprinkle the word like out there every other word, you're going to distract. If you say, I'm like Daryl Jones and like Rod, like, and I are like gonna like talk to you about like this thing like called like reaching like your like audience, that's not only distracting, it's obnoxious. So if we can go to the next slide, Josh, here's the truth. We should not use the word like as often as people ask for. For me, it's pepper and Parmesan. It's about using it wisely. So if you're describing your affinity for something, actually liking something, or better yet, if you are saying, I'm comparing one thing to another, that is the proper usage of the word like. So here's where I want to use you and what you care about. Because there's so much more we could talk about, so much more to reaching your audience, so much more to being effective at it. And we've just scratched the surface. What are some things that you'd like to ask? And Josh, you can stop sharing, although looking at this pasta dish makes me hungry now. So, friends, you can put your questions or comments into the chat. What are you curious about regarding things that you've dealt with? Talk to us a little bit about how you felt, what made you feel uncomfortable when you were talking amongst your friends and introducing yourselves. What else do you want to hear from them, Rod? I'm curious to hear anything that is on their minds.
And Josh, we can also use the Mentimeter. So either the chat or the Mentimeter, if it will provide an anonymous avenue for people. So
I like Mentimeter.
Mentimeter. So ask us anything. What I've developed and Daryl has, we have tips and tricks and little things that I do to help me with my issues. And so anything at all, any questions?
Yeah, ask us anything. So here's mine. This is biologically necessary, yet people don't do it often enough. Breathing,
That's right.
breathing deeply, tanking up so that when you're speaking a sentence, you're not gasping for breath in the middle of it. You are speaking again with fluidity and fluency. Remember, if you know your topic and you're confident about it, even if you feel a little nervous, you're going to be okay. So, what do you find to be the hardest aspect of public speaking? Rod, for me, it is choosing which one of my 3 to 5 topics to cover. How about you?
I have a tendency to go a little long as well, and that then forces me into talking quickly. So that's probably the hardest thing for me is pulling back on information to share.
And here's another in the virtual world for me, Rod. Normally I say to people, look, we have 2 ears, one mouth. Use them in that proportion. Build interaction into your presentations. It's hard. So, how do you avoid filler words? Breathing, pausing, thinking about what you want to say, and then being confident about it. That's my method. What's yours, Rob?
Right here it is. I know with the Zoom, it's difficult and you don't want to get that cup in front or anything to that effect. But I use the cup for my hands. I'm fidgety with my hands. So if I have a cup in my hand as I'm presenting, that gives my hands something to do. And then that pause.
These are great questions. How do I
Right.
stop saying, yeah, same thing, huh?
Huh?
Yeah. Uh, well, here's what you do. Instead of saying pause. Take a breath. Use an imperative and positive transition. So if you're saying that's that topic, and now here's the next one, saying, and now I'd like to talk about instead of next topic is one way to do it. But again, practice even more than you practice now and practice breathing. Rod, what would you say to this one? These are great questions.
These are great questions. And I would say getting comfortable with silence during your presentation. And that goes back to the pause again. Many times we believe that there has to be a constant sound coming out of our mouth, but pause, be okay with the silence, and allow the audience to get okay with your silence as well.
Then here's an interesting question about stopping yourself from stuttering. So, first, if you have an actual speech impediment, it's okay. Just be okay with it because it's part of who you are. But if it's not something that's part of who you are and you stutter because you are just trying to speak too quickly, slow yourself down. Breathe deeply. Pause. And again, know what you're going to say. So, Rod and I, in this instance, can be spontaneous with you all because we know this topic and we practice it. And we use our excitement for the topic to fuel us rather than getting overly excited and stumbling. Rod, what would you say? Again, these questions are fantastic.
And I'd say be okay with it too, as you mentioned. If you do stutter a little bit, just be okay with it. And then if you're okay with it, then the audience will be okay with it as well. And we just when things happen or the wrong word is spoken, just be okay with it and move on.
And think about it, folks. You, to go back to the beginning, are getting instant empathy and sympathy because most people don't do public speaking. So it's okay. People are saying that person's just nervous and I'm going to pull for them. How important are first impressions? Well, here's the only unfair part of reaching an audience. You, of course, only get one chance to give a first impression, and it needs to be good. So all the great things that all of you put into the chat when it comes to just positive body language. Remember, in real life, depending on the setting, it might be up to 68% of how we present publicly. So there are times when I'm just trying to gauge a room. Before I speak, I look around. Now, it might be that I'm calming my heartbeat, but the audience might see it as, oh, this guy is about to light it up because he's confident. So first impressions are important, but the lasting impression to me is just as important. What do you think, Rod?
I like the one comment that talked about the body language where you put your head up and your shoulders back. And my wife's a yoga instructor, and she would say, lead with your heart. And the way that you lead with your heart is by putting your shoulders back, putting your head up, and pushing that heart out. And people will recognize that. And that gives you the physical presence and also that emotion to connect with the audience. First impressions, sometimes it's important for you that you have a good first impression about yourself so that you have the confidence to move down through your presentation. If you self-evaluate as you're giving the presentation and you're not happy with your first impression, that could throw you off a little bit down the path. And that's why I always start out my presentations with an introduction to myself. I feel good about that. I smile. I'm always smiling because people recognize a smile. And when you smile, it kind of brings your voice up and brings you into a good spot. So, have that first few minutes of any presentation. So one of the tricks I do is I have a picture of Penn Hall. And many people know that Penn Hall has a 34-star flag on it. So I introduce myself. I flip to that because I'm from Gettysburg College. You are from Gettysburg College. And I have a little joke. So I say to people, do me a favor, and can you count the stars on the flag? Well, you can't see anything, but it's enough to break the ice. It's something I do all the time. It helps my nerves, and it gets that first impression out there. Tell a little bit of history, a little reaching out about Gettysburg College, 34 stars, a little story, and that gets things rolling then.
And this is cheesy, but if you smile at yourself in the mirror, which takes fewer muscles than frowning, you're going to relax. So when speaking off the cuff, how do you avoid tangents? Here's what I know. When you all were in breakouts, if you heard how many tangents we hit on between Josh and Rod and me, you'd say, oh my gosh, these guys. But the way you know it is, again, if you use silence and you know what you're going to say, even if you're speaking off the cuff, stick to 3 topics. Build in interaction. Ask important non-yes/no questions. How does everybody feel about that topic? Tell me what's on your mind. Ask the audience to reflect about something in silence. That'll keep you on your task, you on your topic, and keep you from wandering off onto several tangents. Rod, what are your thoughts?
2 things that I find happen to me with tangents. I repeat myself. I have a tendency to say the same sentence 2 or 3 times again just to fill the air. And so that's kind of a tangent that I'll get off on. And if I do recognize I'm off on a tangent, I try to bring it back. Just don't cut it off, but try to circle back around to the presentation so it doesn't look like a dead-end tangent.
All right. So how do I keep from feeling awkward when introducing myself and speaking to people?
Good question.
I love the question, but I want to tell you that it's okay, again, to feel a little awkward if it fuels you to be more careful. So remember that you're the only one that knows the topic of you, which is why we had you introduce yourselves. So there's no need to really feel awkward because only you know if you've forgotten something. And because you're going to be interacting, you can add it later by saying, I'd love to tell you one more thing about me when you remember it.
I go back to my wife's yoga instruction, and she tells everybody in her class that we're all gifts. And we are each individual person. We are special. We are a gift. And that's one way to think about that and to bring up your introduction and make that personal connection.
And how long did it take for you to become comfortable speaking publicly? Believe it or not, even with this, even though we're in a community in which we all have a connection, Rod and I were talking about it. We had positive butterflies. We don't let it paralyze us. But I guess for me, the reveal is this. Believe it or not, I'm an introvert. I get my energy from within. I turn it on for public reaching of audiences, influencing people, speaking to try to convince people to do things. But I'm never complacent. So I'm 57 and I still get butterflies, and my job is speaking. So I guess it's just a work in progress. How about for you, Rod?
Same thing. We're the same age, and we've talked about this. I think that the one thing that shifted for me over time is being okay with it. I used to think, oh, I have to get rid of those butterflies. I shouldn't be nervous. Why am I nervous? But now it's like, okay, I'm nervous, and let's use that, and let's be okay with it and comfortable with it.
My gosh, these are great questions. And Rod, I know we have one more breakout plan, but should we just keep honoring the questions? Your call on this.
I'm trying to see what time we have here. We have a little bit of time, and these are fantastic questions. This is what we were hoping for, so let's keep rolling with it.
So, how to be mindful of the speed of our speech? One is, again, immediate feedback loops. So you can record yourselves, and then you can listen to yourselves and give yourselves feedback. And again, my feedback model that I happen to use with track and field, I see a couple of the people I coach here, is 2 positives and then 1 thing to work on so that it's never detrimental. So I just practice pausing and speaking a little more slowly. And if you start speaking slowly in the beginning, by the time you speak in what way you think is fast, it's actually a normal pace. Rod, your thoughts?
Well, I usually, if it's a high profile presentation, I will plant a spy in the audience. And I look at that person and I charge them with giving me feedback. And I will look to that person and either get a nod or slow down or speed up or speak more loudly. Because sometimes you're thinking about what you're saying, you're looking around a room, where am I going to walk? Because I don't want to fall off the stage. So there's a lot of things to think about. So I will at times ask somebody to sit in the audience and I can glance to them and get feedback from them.
Aha. And thus my method of making connections as people are entering the room so that I can call on someone to say, you need to speak up, or you need to slow down, or tell us more about that. So we agree on the hand signals before. How do you make eye contact with other people? Look at them. And if it makes you nervous, if you're far away from an audience, you can look at them in the eyebrows and they think you're looking at them in the eye. But whenever I'm talking to groups of 40, 50, 500, or 1,000, I actually look at different parts of the room, but I sweep the room slowly so that everybody feels that I've made eye contact with them.
I would say practice. And one of the more powerful activities in which I've participated was standing in a long line. There was about 20 of us in each line. We stood about 2 feet apart, looking each other in the eye, and we did it for about 15 or 20 minutes. And doing that exercise, you can uncover the reason why it's difficult for you to look somebody else in the eye and talk about it and be open about it. And then after that 15, 20-minute session, we sat down and, we all had this group discussion around it, and people shared what was uncomfortable and what could we do to adjust that. So I would say practice it, not necessarily giving a presentation, but just do that with some friends and just say, hey, let's stand in a couple lines. Let's have 4 people, 3 people, whatever. I know we have COVID, but that'll pass. And just look at each other in the eye and practice. It's just like anything else.
And Rod, that's perfect advice actually for this next related question about maintaining eye contact. Sure, you're going to giggle a little bit if you're practicing it with your friends, but as a way to gain influence, if you're in a negotiation or an interview, maintaining slightly longer eye contact is a way to gain a desired outcome. And again, this is manipulation in the wrong hands, but influence in the right hands. What I tell people to do is to make sure you're properly hydrated so that you can blink a little less often.
Mm.
You can change your posture every once in a while maintaining eye contact. But it's okay, at least in American culture, to look around a little bit when you're gathering your thoughts. But when you want to make your point, you give that eye contact.
Mm-hmm.
When you are listening, you keep the eye contact. But know where you are culturally so that if you're in a country that basically says that breaking eye contact is a sign of disrespect, know where you are and know what to do in those instances. But again, as Rod said, practice.
Another trick I do if you need a break, and it depends on the setting. If you're in a meeting, I always take a pencil and paper so that if I need a break from eye contact or I need a break, I can look down, make a couple notes, and it looks like you're being productive. You're not being disrespectful. You're just taking some notes. But at the same time, that's giving you a break from that. So just the little things that you can use that look normal or they look, like part of the process, but it has dual purposes.
And that actually is related to this question about how important it is to have a speech memorized. So if a place requires you to give a speech verbatim, type it out. My trick, Rod, something to do with age and something to do with the fact that I just like it, as I use a giant font and I make it ultra bold. And my trick is, if I'm going to read, I get to a point that I know what the next sentence is going to start with. And during the pause, I'll look up at one part of the room and I'll read more. During the pause, I'll look at another part of the room. So if it is required that you memorize the speech, then you need to memorize the speech and do it in a way that helps you to replicate the setting. So if you're going to be speaking standing up, practice standing up. If you're going to be speaking to a large room, practice in a large room. But I say the speech could be extemporaneous or off the cuff. It could be memorized. It could be read. But it has to fit the occasion. Rod, what are your thoughts there?
I just find that I get nervous and I forget. I can't rely upon myself to memorize a speech or to memorize what I'm going to say. So I utilize talking points a good bit. And to your point, Daryl, I print them out. I put them in big, bold fonts so I can glance at them. And it's just to help me cue my memory. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's what I'm going to talk about. And then I talk about it. So I have a trustee presentation to give tomorrow night. And I will have talking points laid out here so that I can glance at them. I won't have word by word, but I'll have what I want to cover. And I need them or else I'll get nervous and forget them.
And for me, each one of the speeches I gave last week that I told Josh and Rod about, one was to a school in North Carolina, one was to a school in New York City, one was to a school in Maine, one was to a school in Chicago. So those were my nights last week. I had 2 meetings with each of the people who invited me to speak. And then I literally spent time saying, what will I say when I say it? What's my tone? What's my body language? How do I harness it and sound authentic when I'm in a rectangle? And then if these questions come up, how will I answer them? So part of it is, again, being ultra confident with your topic. And the other is liking yourself enough to be confident with you.
That's right. Excellent points. Excellent points. So we're going to move into, and thank you for those fantastic questions. They are all just great questions. So we're going to move into our final breakout session, and we'll cut it back a little bit here to about 5 minutes. So planning, moving on to the next step. So 2 questions. How will you apply the knowledge and skills you learned today? And how will you test this new knowledge and skills? How will you know that you've learned something and you're applying it? So back into the breakout sessions. We'll do this for about 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and wrap it up. So thank you and enjoy the next sharing. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for being with us today. This is exciting.
Yeah, really enjoyed seeing faces and names of the community. Man, Rod and I were talking about it. We sure miss you all. So
absolutely.
Let's get it right in the spring so we can stay, everybody. Please.
Yeah, it's great. So while everybody's coming back, just a little feedback for Daryl and myself and Josh. So what did you find engaging about this session? What was it that kept you staying with us? I know, knowing that you're out there and seeing the names and the faces and having it. Yeah, the audience interaction, good stuff. Different perspectives, yes. Well, just know also that this isn't the last time we have to engage with each other. Daryl's around, I'm around. And so you have our emails that I sent out. And if you want to practice, I really take the time and I do mock interviews with students, and I help people with their presentations, resumes. So if you have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out to me and just write me a couple sentences to help me remember, and would love to engage with you again.
Same with me, because this is a skill that you literally use for life. I mean, the communication skill, reaching your audience, whether it's an audience of 2 or 200, it's something that basically builds leaders in society. And this is no matter what sector you plan to go into. Everybody gets the same level of content knowledge, but the communicators become leaders by default. These are all some great things. Encouraging, love that. Practical audience engagement, love it.
Yeah, this is great. Well, I'm almost, I'm a little sad, Daryl, that and I'm sure there'll be another time when we all can get together and exchange thoughts. And thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for sharing with us. And any final words, Daryl, before we have to shut off the Zoom session?
Just this. Be confident in knowing you and knowing your topic and knowing that you are, again, to my friend who said being the center of attention is uncomfortable. It's, again, okay. It's okay to have a stutter. It's okay to feel insecure, because as the speaker, remember, you get empathy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.